Happy June, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of More to Explore, where we keep you up to date with everything happening here at explore.org. And we've got a great show for you today featuring our main cow barn cam that you see here, because we, as the Explorer community, have the opportunity to help with a new study about friendship among cows, and it's starting today. So we'll get a look at that, and then later we'll get a full update with on Egg Watch with Mike and Holly. So let's get to it. My name is Brian Bird, and I'm joined again by Explore.org's resident naturalist, Mike Fitz. Mike, good afternoon.
Hey, Brian, and hello to everybody around the world. Thanks for being here. Welcome back to all of our longtime viewers. And if you're new to the community, welcome. We are the world's largest live nature cam network with about 200 live cameras all over the world. If you want to tell us about the cameras you've been watching or looking forward to watching this week, you can let us know in the comments. We'll be looking for those. I know we have people saying hello from Colorado and Chicago and elsewhere as well. And like Brian said, we're looking at the main cow pasture camera at Farm Sanctuary in New York State. This is near Utica, or no, not Utica. What's the other? Watkins Glen. Sorry to get the places confused. They're not at all alike. So I apologize for anybody from that area. But Farm Sanctuary was founded in 1986, and they advocate for laws and policies to prevent suffering of farm animals, promote compassion for them, and bring about reforms to give farm animals better lives. And a good life really means having the freedom to choose your friends and your social partners, which is something that farm animals generally don't have the ability to do, but they can at Farm Sanctuary. So for a moment, I want everyone to kind of consider what friendship means. You know, how does it influence your life, your relationships, your well-being? That's a big question, right? So we're not going to answer it here. But I wanted to just highlight that we know that no matter the challenges and joys brought by it, friendship, simply put, is extraordinarily valuable. We know comparatively little, however, about cooperative and friendly relationships among non-human animals, especially compared to easier to study behaviors, such as the ways animals satisfy their hunger or reproduce or avoid predators. So what does it mean for an animal to invest in and prioritize a positive connection with another individual of its own species? How might that affect their lives and welfare? A community science project with Farm Sanctuary aims to illuminate our understanding of the affiliative relationships among domestic cattle, who are one of the most numerous animals on the planet. And unfortunately, one is often subjected to unnatural conditions to produce the meat and dairy foods for our consumption. Through the study of Farm Sanctuary, we might gain a better understanding of social bonds in cattle and apply that knowledge to give them better lives under our care. And to help us learn more about it and how to contribute your webcam observations to the study, I spoke with Sasha Prasad-Shreckengast, who is a researcher at Farm Sanctuary. We talked about the study. We talked about their research philosophy, too, at Farm Sanctuary, which I found very interesting. And here's our conversation. Sasha, thanks so much for taking the time to join me. I'm really excited to learn about your study.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
We know that dominance confers advantages for individual animals, and that's pretty well established in the scientific literature, and we can see it just by kind of watching a group of animals do their thing. And because a dominant animal can gain priority access to food, it can maybe more reproductive opportunities or gain access to safer habitat. But what advantages does friendliness or cooperation provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So there certainly are numerous benefits to these friendly types or affiliative relationships among social animals. We have seen in the literature that there's a reduction in risk to injury. There are also stress benefits in the sense that these relationships can lower ambient stress. And we've also seen benefits in the facilitation of social learning. And these are especially beneficial within structured dominance hierarchies because they can provide animals with an additional sense of predictability and stability within their social structure.
I'm curious about cattle, though. You have many animals at Farm Sanctuary, but what inspired you to study the social relationships of domestic cattle?
Yeah, so I have been at Farm Sanctuary for 5 years, but Farm Sanctuary is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. So the organization has decades of experience of caring for cows and witnessing the types of relationships that they seem to form with one another. So I'm really grateful and excited for the opportunity to take those lived experiences and those observations and investigate them through the scientific lens.
And then the conditions at Farm Sanctuary, they differ from those experienced by most cattle, especially those designated or destined to be slaughtered for food. So how are cows, what is their life and experiences like at Farm Sanctuary compared to maybe other cows?
Yeah, it's a super unique environment when you compare it to, like you alluded to, the norms within the animal agriculture system. So we have mixed breed herds and mixed age herds. So we have cows who would be otherwise raised for dairy living alongside cows who would otherwise be raised for meat consumption in the same herd. Our herds range in age from a few years to near 20 years old. So we just have a lot more diversity in our herds. And then, as far as the lives that they live and the conditions that they live under, there's a lot more autonomy and choice in their environment. They're able to choose where to go, who to spend time with, what aspects of the environment to engage in, uh, to a degree that is less likely to be seen within animal agriculture.
So it sounds like they're going to be able to, or they're able to uh, express maybe a more full range of their natural behaviors and have more choices in that sense. And maybe that is an idea that we can think about as we're talking about the study. So I want to ask you a few questions now about this uh, relationship study for cows. First of all, just maybe give us a big picture of the study itself. How does it work?
Yeah, so we're going to be watching the our cow herd interact, individual members of the herd interact with one another, and just capture the types of interactions that they're having, whether they're these friendly or affiliative relationships or interactions, or the dominance or aggressive interactions. And we're going to be doing that through our Explore cameras that we have set up outside of the barns. And the goal of the study is to see whether or how the affiliative relationships manifest and, whether we can identify friendships more specifically within those affiliative bonds.
And that seems to be like the main thing that you're trying to document. Is that correct? Like the more friendly and affiliated relationships, is that you kind of your main goal?
Correct. Yes. I mean, we know that there will be a dominance hierarchy within this herd because that is how cattle groups arrange themselves socially. And we are interested to see how or whether that dominance hierarchy impacts these friendly relationships at all. So that is still a piece that we're looking at. But yes, our main goal is to look at the friendly relationships within the herd.
And then how does this study differ from maybe most all other studies on cows, especially research set in, um, you know, uh, animal agriculture settings?
I think the biggest difference is that there's just that diversity in the herd that I alluded to. Within the animal agriculture industry, especially if we're thinking of like the dairy industry, we're looking at behaviors of a single breed of very similar ages and very similar reproductive or at points in the reproductive lives. Where here we don't have those constraints. So we're looking at a wide diversity of traits that you just simply can't study within the animal agriculture industry as it's currently configured. Um, yeah, and I think also the different or the increased autonomy that they're able to have, um, that will just provide a different lens to this study as well.
Are there specific qualities of cows that lend themselves well to this type of study? I don't have much experience around cows themselves. Of course, I've seen them along the roadside and been up close to them a few times, but just haven't been involved in that world. So yeah, I'm really kind of curious about the animal themselves, cows. What lends themselves well to this study?
So for this study in particular, since we are looking at the affiliative relationships, um, cows are, it's pretty uh, or I'll say it's easier to tell when they are having a friendly interaction because it usually manifests itself as allogrooming, which is just when one individual licks another. And that's a pretty straightforward behavior to be able to capture via video. Um, and then also just from experience and anecdotes from our caregivers, there is just a lot of observations of what these individuals define as friendships or friendly relationships. So we know that, even in a non-scientific or an untrained setting, people are able to identify these relationships, or they believe they're able to identify these relationships. So there's a good track record, at least anecdotally, in identifying friendships. So we're eager to see whether we can confirm that through the scientific process.
And I was just thinking too, that the cows are pretty easy to identify. It's not just like their behaviors, but they're different patterns. It's not like a group of sheep, for instance. Like if we look at, the sheep barn, for instance, it's a big group of sheep and they know who each other are, but it's much harder for me to tell who's who. It's probably not the same. It's probably a lot easier with cows.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that because that is a huge reason why we chose this herd in particular in this group of animals, because they are all fairly straightforward to identify visually.
Let's talk more about the behaviors. So you mentioned a little bit about it, but what behaviors are you looking for?
So allo grooming will be a big behavior that we're interested in. There was a study on feral cattle out of Hong Kong that showed that the friendly relationships in these individuals was primarily expressed through allo grooming. And we also see so much allo grooming. Anyone who has the opportunity to just watch the Explore cameras of the cow herds at Farm Sanctuary will probably have the opportunity to see some of that behavior in action. So we're looking certainly for that. But we're also interested in other behaviors, including proximity. So how closely are they spending time with certain individuals of the herd? And then other friendly behaviors like uh, nuzzling or, um, social sniffing and things like that.
And then is it important for the audience to record non-friendly behaviors as well? Some of those maybe dominance interactions?
Yeah, we are interested in those too. What we, yes, I will. My inkling is that those will be less frequent in our herd just because they have lived together for so long that the hierarchy is pretty, I imagine it's pretty well understood. But because that is still an interest of this study, and especially because we expect those behaviors to be kind of rare, we are certainly interested in those more conflict-oriented behaviors, including aggression.
Yeah, that's a good point. If they're all familiar with one another, like they don't need to sort out the hierarchy every day. They just kind of know who's who.
That's
And
my
yeah,
assumption, so I guess
yeah.
we'll see if that's true.
Okay. But yeah, let's find out. And I'm sure our sharp-eyed audience will be paying attention to that. Speaking of them, speaking of our audience, how can people participate in the study?
So what we're asking members of the public to do is log on to the Farm Sanctuary Explore cameras. Specifically, there's a camera overlooking our main cow barn and pasture. And there will be a really quick survey um, that they can access to just flag when um, behaviors that look like they might be those friendly behaviors or potentially those hierarchy driven behaviors are being displayed. And then if they feel confident enough to identify the individuals involved and the specific behaviors that were observed, that's a bonus. But really, all we're asking for at a minimum is the timestamp of approximately when those behaviors are happening. And just submit that quick survey, and we'll take it from there.
How might this knowledge be used to help improve, the physical and mental welfare of cows? I mean, like I mentioned before, they're one of the most numerous animals on the planet, but a lot of times the way that they're treated is out of sight, out of mind. Like we don't really think about it if we pull a pack of meat off the shelf, or cheese, or milk, or whatever it happens to be. So I'm curious about like the follow through. Like if you learn something, how could this? And it's a lot of speculation that I'm asking you to do, so I apologize for that. But yeah, how might that improve their physical and mental lives?
I think if we are able to find evidence of these friendships, I think it has multiple benefits for cows. I think for cows broadly, beyond the individuals that live at Farm Sanctuary, um, my feeling is that by highlighting that they have these friends and that this is another similarity that they share with the human experience, I think it has the potential to perhaps just shift how people view cows, maybe uh, encourage them to see them as real thinking, feeling beings, and individuals rather than just a product for consumption. Um, so that's one way. And then there's also real tangible benefits for the individuals at Farm Sanctuary. It can help us make decisions um, about, keeping friends together for the long term. We already really tried to do that based on the information we have currently, but this can just give us even more evidence and confidence that, when perhaps there's decisions to be made from a healthcare perspective, or maybe somebody needs to be taken to the vet, perhaps for a longer time. This can help us make decisions about maybe how it could impact other individuals rather than, just the individual of focus for a medical reason. So I think there are also a lot of benefits for how we care for the individuals at Farm Sanctuary too.
And I want to ask you a few questions about, your research ethics at Farm Sanctuary, because research, and even like the mere attempt to ask questions, in my opinion, is sort of like a human-centered effort, since it originates in our minds. Like, right, we're observing and we're coming up with questions in our brain. Lots of research, though, historically asked important questions, but the methods to get toward the answers often discounted the welfare of animals. So I understand that you take a different approach at Farm Sanctuary. In what ways do you evaluate your research proposals to center the welfare of the animals within that study? So that's always sort of like in the front of everyone's minds.
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. I think or not I think, I know it's a longstanding um, principle in any work with animals is to reduce the amount of harm that the animal subjects will be exposed to. But at Farm Sanctuary, we take it beyond that, whereas harm is prohibited. We are not harming the participants of the study, even if it's in the long term for their benefit or for the quote greater good. Um, but we can still do really good research within those constraints. And um, it's actually been a really fun challenge because in order for, this study is purely observational, but we also do experimental studies. And those studies have to be a positive experience for the residents because we are asking them to volunteer and choose to participate in these studies. So it's been a really fun challenge for me too as a researcher is, how can we carry out rigorous science while keeping the animal's experience at the center and prioritizing their well-being above, our personal priorities as a researcher.
And I was reading on your website about your research ethics and guidelines, and it also that that philosophy that you have, it really goes beyond the study itself. It seems like you're also thinking forward too. So what considerations do you evaluate so that harm doesn't come to the animals in the future from the things that you've learned through your work?
Yeah, we have a lot of conversations about that exact question because we recognize that, we're going to make the best decisions with whatever information we have at the time, but, that those decisions might exist in a real gray space. So sometimes we might come to the conclusion that it's really important for us to name the individual residents that were involved in a study and give them, the credit and highlight their individuality in that way. Whereas other times, it might be really important to keep their identity more anonymous. So, for example, at Farm Sanctuary, we've had some residents reach maybe not quite celebrity status, but farm sanctuary celebrity status. And we just want to be thoughtful of, depending on the individual, is that a positive experience for them? Are they really loving the human engagement and the extra attention? Or maybe are they individuals who prefer, their space and don't enjoy those interactions? So those are the types of things we'll consider. And we recognize, that might not be, when we're talking about harms, we're not talking about perhaps like physical pain or those types of harms, but we're really cognizant of the social and just emotional experience that each individual could be having, and recognizing that harm can be emotional as well as physical.
Yeah, each animal is its own, or their own individual with their own, the personalities and dispositions. I'm sure I'm confident that there are animals that are extroverted and there are animals that are introverted. So you don't want to force an introverted animal into an extroverted situation, at least most of the time. So yeah, you really do have to know those individuals well. And I am curious about the cows that are under your care, that we're going to be watching and paying close attention to through this study. Can you tell us a little bit about the cows in the main pasture, and where they came from?
Yeah, so we actually have two cattle herds at Farm Sanctuary, but this is our main herd simply because they live on our main campus at Farm Sanctuary. And these pastures tend to be a bit flatter, so this is where we tend to have our older individuals or cows that might have some mobility challenges. Um, so you'll see some of our oldest residents at the sanctuary. And there are cows of various breeds. So you'll see cows that would otherwise be raised for dairy living alongside cows otherwise raised for meat. Um, yeah, males and females are both in the herd, which is again different from the dairy industry. Yeah, they come from diverse backgrounds. It's a really diverse group, which makes them particularly interesting to study.
And I actually hadn't even thought of that, how the diversity of ages and sexes and breeds is in itself very, very unique compared to most other experiences for virtually every cow on Earth. Are there one or two individuals that you've come to know who you think have particularly interesting stories or personalities?
I think they're all such interesting individuals, but I will highlight Pietro. So Pietro is a male Holstein steer who came to Farm Sanctuary around the same time that I did, which is why I feel like I have a especially um, close bond with him. So he's about 5 years old now. And he, as a Holstein steer, was rescued from the dairy industry as a calf. And male dairy calves, since they will never produce milk, don't have value to the industry. So they often are either sold for veal or, disposed of otherwise on the farms. But Pietro actually had a pretty severe leg injury and was receiving vet care for that injury. And then through that process, someone saw him as someone rather than just something to be discarded and advocated for him to be placed into sanctuary. So even though that injury itself was really traumatic and I'm sure it was incredibly painful, that ended up being what saved his life. And he was in a cast when I first met him, and he was basically the size of like a German Shepherd at the time. So he had one of those cones that we've seen probably on our companion dogs. And he made a full recovery and is now living an incredibly rich life and with his herd of many other cows.
Well, I look forward to getting to know him just a little bit more. Uh, just a few more questions for you, Sasha. I consider myself to be basically an observer. I'm not a scientist, but I read a lot. I spend a lot of time observing animals. From my perspective, there's a growing body of evidence within ethology, which is the study of animal behavior, and also neuroscience that's looking at brains of non-human and human animals. It's really illuminating our understanding of animal minds and consciousness and what animals really are capable of and what's going on inside of their heads. What trends are you seeing? I'm just curious about your opinion on this. What trends are you seeing in ethology regarding the mental experiences of non-humans, and where might that research take us in the future?
I think as ethology was becoming a field of its own, there was a real tendency to um, reject anthropomorphism to such an extreme that often we weren't even imagining that there could be so many shared experiences between the human experience and an animal experience. And what I've seen happen more recently is the recognition that acknowledging these similarities isn't flawed inherently. And I think that because of that, we are able to look at relationships like friendships in other species. And, we're able to think about maybe other areas of similarities, within reason. I think there is still a real value to being really careful about overly anthropomorphizing other species. But I think on the flip side of that too is many other species are capable of things that as humans will never experience, whether that's the ability to fly or see in the UV color spectrum. And so I imagine those are obviously physical differences, but I imagine that there are emotional differences too that, we might not actually be able to experience as humans, but there are plenty of similarities, and that's the area of research that I find really interesting. Um, yeah, because I don't think the gap between us and other species is quite as big as scientists believed it was at one point.
Yeah, I agree with that. We have to be critical in our anthropomorphism, but it's no scientific sin to do that. So, yeah, look at animals, but evaluate their behavior in a critical lens or through a critical lens. But it can really illuminate a lot about really their what's going on in their lives. I'm curious too about what you think we stand to gain through a better understanding of friendly relationships between animals. In other words, might that knowledge help us reevaluate our relationship with our non-human neighbors?
I think there's great potential there. I personally am someone who, as I learned more about the similarity between humans and other species, grew just greater empathy and compassion for other animals. And um, I think that if we can highlight the friendships in cows specifically, who, as you mentioned, are an often forgotten individual or the species despite being so numerous. Um, yeah, I'm just interested to see if by highlighting those types of relationships, um, others will maybe expand their circle of compassion to include cows as well.
Yeah, my line of thinking has evolved in a similar manner too. I didn't really understand what animals were capable of until I started looking at them as individuals, and it's really opened my mind up to different possibilities. One final question for you, Sasha, is I'm just curious about your sort of background. How and when did you become interested in animals, and what advice would you give to anyone, especially a student who wants to pursue a career learning about and helping animals?
Yeah, I love this question. As a child, I was always someone who said I wanted to work with animals. And for the vast majority of my childhood, that meant being a vet or a dolphin trainer at the time. But my parents quickly tried to steer me towards the vet path. Um, but what I would like to hopefully encourage to other people who really feel that draw to work with animals and to improve the lives of animals is, I think being a vet is a very admirable career, but there are also other options out there. The field of animal welfare science is expanding, and I think the field needs compassionate, passionate individuals who really center the experience of the individuals that they care for um, in the field. So, yeah, my best advice would just be to recognize that the field is broader than maybe it feels like it is when you're in high school or even undergrad.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I would like, if anyone's listening who's maybe trying to mentor a young person who's interested in animals, maybe Sasha, would you say that person could help the young person in their life maybe think big about the possibilities?
Absolutely.
I think that's a good point to end our conversation on. Sasha, I would like to thank you for your time and joining us. I learned a lot, and I'm really looking forward to participating in the study.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike.
I want to thank Sasha once again for taking the time to speak with me. I certainly learned a lot. Sasha Prasad-Shreckengast is a researcher at Farm Sanctuary. Science is showing us that non-human animals are capable of much more than we've historically given them credit for. And I'm eager to see what we discover through this research in partnership with Farm Sanctuary. We shouldn't look at farm animals simply as products to be consumed. So understanding more about friendships among animals and how it affects their well-being could go a long way towards helping us give farm animals better lives. And if you want to learn more about the work of Farm Sanctuary, go to their website, farmsanctuary.org. And of course, if you want to watch their webcams in partnership with us, explore.org is the place to be. Just search for Farm Sanctuary, or if you want to participate in the study, search for the cow pasture, and you'll get that camera coming up in the search results. Brian, the survey and the study are live on explore.org as of a couple of hours ago, as I understand it.
Yeah, it is. And I'll take you through just a quick little live demo on how to do it. So let me just bring up my screen right here. So as you make your way to explore.org, you want to go to the main cow and pasture camera. So you can just put in main cow barn at the top here. It'll be the first result. And once you get to this page, you'll be watching the cows. Once you see some behavior that they're looking for, I highly recommend taking a snapshot. It's not required, but I highly recommend it just so you have the information for later. But on the page, to get to the survey, you'll see the banner right at the top here. Or also, Sasha has a pinned comment where you can see different resources for the different behaviors and also another link to the survey. So once you have a moment that you want to record, you want to come over to the survey, and it's a simple Google form, nothing complicated, and you'll just fill out the information like your name, your email, the date of the observation, the approximate time of the observation. One thing I do want to note that the camera's time is on Easter time, so make sure if you're in a different time zone to do the conversion. And then just check the behaviors that you observed. And then again, you have more definitions of the different behaviors that they're looking for at the bottom here. And then a snapshot link if you have it. And so here's where the snapshot really comes in handy for two reasons. One, to have a link for the researchers to verify. But once you take a snapshot, you can also see it in the gallery. And this is where the links are public. Let's see, I believe... I'm not going to record this because it's somebody else's snapshot, but Cam Ryan had a great snapshot earlier of some owl grooming here. And so let's say I took this. This is mine the moment I wanted to record. One thing that's great that it does show that the camera times, so you don't make the mistake of different conversions because time zones are hard. It happens to me all the time. But also when you do link the snapshot, this is the link you want right here. So you just copy that, and then at that point, you paste it right there. So once you have all your information in the form, just make sure to submit here at the bottom, and that's it.
Cool. It's actually a lot simpler than I first anticipated when I heard about it. So that's really good. And maybe we can apply sort of some of this methods to some of our other webcams where we're looking at how different individuals interact with one another. We did have a few audience comments coming in while we were listening to the interview with Sasha. And Cynthia actually writes in and says, hello from Philadelphia. I'm looking forward to my tiny house stay at Farm Sanctuary next month, my 5th time. So you must enjoy it, Cynthia. I actually was just reading about that the other day. It does look kind of fun. There's lots of people maybe who've never considered going to a farm and hanging out. I've done that for like blueberry farms, blueberry barrens in eastern Maine, not because they're really pretty, but also because you get to eat blueberries, which I love. So yeah, enjoy that, Cynthia. Flower Bear had a question about some of the one of the words we were talking about in the interview. Flower Bear was wondering, how is the grooming word spelled? Sounds like owl grooming to me, like OWL grooming. No, it's not that. It's ALO grooming. So it's ALLO groom. It's a form of social grooming. Basically, it's specific to animals grooming each other that belong to the same species. So that's what they were referring to there. People do it. You can see other apes do it. You can see cows doing it as well. So that's what they're referring to. M Photographer 8400 was wondering, Brian, about the recordings of these programs. Are these recordings available after the live shows? I have a friend who couldn't make it today.
They are. So with all of our live events, we're here live, and then as soon as we're done with our show, it wraps up, it becomes a video on YouTube. So you can find it at the same link if you're watching it now, or you can find the playlist with all of the More to Explorers on a playlist on YouTube. And then if you look at the events calendar on explore.org, you can find most of them there as well.
And then just a couple of more questions, though, but this will help us, I think, transition, or comments, and this will help us transition into our next segment, because we have a lot of birds to talk about, as we always do on More to Explore. And Charlotte said that they watched the fledging of the titmouse chicks yesterday. I'm actually sad that I missed that live. I was outside, I think, when it happened. I kind of had a nice evening where I was. So I was just enjoying a late sunset yesterday, taking a walk. But yeah, I was able to catch the replay of that this morning, and it was amazing. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We're also going to talk about something that Rolling Trouble mentioned. Rolling said, great gray owls have been soaked recently. It's been wet in that part of North America, in Montana recently. We're going to talk about these things and other stuff in our recurring segment, Egg Watch. This is our June 1st, 2026 edition of Egg Watch, where we check on the bird nesting activity of our myriad cams on explore.org. This update includes birds whose worlds just got a whole lot bigger, the anticipated arrival of new chicks, as well as reminders of struggle and loss in bird nests. And to help us talk about the eggs and the bird activity on explore.org, I want to welcome back our bird naturalist, Holly Garrett. Holly, you have been sitting patiently waiting for us to talk to you, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be a part of Egg Watch. We have some exciting updates that have been going on. But yeah, first we have our puffins. So we have Willie and Millie again. And the egg has been in the burrow since the cam went live on May 11th. And so incubation lasts a bit over a month. So we're looking at around 41 days for incubation. So hopefully around June 20th or so is when we can probably expect some sort of hatch, or even mid-June, assuming that the egg may have even been laid before the cam went live. But we are also able to watch nesting turns on the Boulder Berm cam while we're waiting for some egg hatching activity from those puffins.
And thanks to the Audubon Seabird Institute for partnering with us there for our cameras on Seal Island National Wildlife Refuge in Maine. And then we have some new eggs to welcome to our Egg Watch segment, Holly. One of your favorite birds, the European roller. Last time you talked about how you're thinking the eggs are coming soon, and we did get 3 eggs in this nest over the last few days.
Very exciting to see the 3 eggs from these guys. And the incubation period for them is going to last around 17 to 19 days. So I would again be looking around mid to late June, maybe June 19th, 20th, to when we can start seeing these eggs hatch, which is pretty cool. And it's pretty fun to watch them incubate. Usually the female does do most of the incubation, but with these birds, in the same kind of cousins with kingfishers, a lot of times the males and females do share incubation duties, which is pretty neat. And then once we see that incubation, once we see that those eggs hatching, usually around 25 to 30 days, they're going to be fledging, and then we'll usually see feathers appearing around 12 days. So definitely, I think the June and July are going to be great months to be keeping an eye on this cam, as we're going to be seeing some cool updates coming soon.
Yeah, and thanks to Ornis Italica for partnering with us there. So travel to Europe every day. Go check out the European roller nest. In Texas, though, we are celebrating a milestone for the black-crested titmouse and the 3 nestlings there, Holly. They all fledged just yesterday. So that was really amazing to see.
This was incredible, and I was fortunate that I was tuning into this and got to watch them take their first flight. And just watching a bird finally stretch its wings and fly for the first time is so magical, really. And yeah, so they fledged pretty much right on time. And what was crazy is, if you remember back to our last egg watch, they were just still kind of little unfeathered babies. So from unfeathered babies to full birds in 2 weeks is pretty incredible growth. Um, and I think too, this is just a nice reminder about baby bird season once again, that when you see these little baby birds looking like this, where, I mean, they're still learning how to fly, right? So oftentimes we'll see them close to the ground. We might see them on the ground. Sometimes our first instinct is to rescue these birds, is to pick them up, take them to our home. These birds are birds we really want to leave on the ground. The parents are almost always nearby. The parents know that they can't fly yet, and can't fly yet, and mom and dad are almost always watching out for them. So just a nice reminder that if you do see baby birds like this on the ground, leave them be. They're probably doing just fine.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And we want to thank our partner, Texas Backyard Wildlife, for setting up that camera, giving us insight into that nesting process for this species. And also for me, like the little bit of sense of freedom that I felt seeing that bird take flight for the first time. It's just like moving out of home. You're like, hey, I can do my thing now. I don't know exactly what it's like for birds, but I did get that little sense of freedom when I saw that.
No, it does really give you a sense of the meaning of fledging the nest, right?
Exactly. And we're not quite there yet with our peregrine falcons, but that's also coming up soon as well. So we have 3 falcon nests that we're watching. Let's talk about the Chesapeake falcons first, Holly. These are in Baltimore, Maryland. Bo and Barb are doing well, bringing lots of food to those 5 ISs that are in the nest.
Yeah, look at those 5 guys. really in that Muppet stage right now. And we saw hatch with them around mid-May, with the first two ISs hatching on May 16th, the third one on May 17th, the fourth on May 18th, and the fifth on May 19th. So you can see they are still pretty young, just around 2 weeks old. So they really still haven't started to get any of their real flight feathers, or contour feathers as we sometimes call them. They still kind of have that natal down. Um, and then for them to, it's going to take around a month and a half until they're ready to fledge, so around late June. But definitely, I would be keeping an eye on this one, because we are really going to start seeing them start to look more falcon-like in the next couple weeks. And yeah, you can really see the 5 chicks is quite a handful.
Thanks to the Chesapeake Conservancy for partnering with us there. And speaking of little falcons, Great Spirit Bluff, uh, their birds are looking much, much closer to fledging. I don't think it's going to be too much longer, Holly, before they leave their nest box.
No, you can actually really see with these guys that they're starting to look like teenage falcons now. And so they were hatched on April 28th for the first two ISs, April 29th for the third. So these birds are about a month old now. And so we can expect that they'll probably be fledging around mid-June. And it's pretty fun, actually. I was watching this camera earlier this morning, and there you can really start to see them testing out their wings, and that's a lot of times what these young raptors will do. They'll kind of walk around and flap and start to kind of get a feel of what it's like to be a bird. So you're going to really be seeing them look like falcons in the next couple weeks.
And a similar story for Castle Rock with Faber and Elsa there raising uh, three, three, or excuse me, 4 chicks there. Now that I glanced at it and getting all my notes um, mixed up. But they're maybe about a week behind the last nest that we're just looking at. But also these birds are doing really well. Sometimes, Holly, I'll see the parents bringing food to this nest and they just don't even look that hungry. They're so well fed.
These chicks just, they really just look like they're living the life. They look really nice and healthy, well fed, kind of plump, which is great to see. And these guys hatched, we saw their hatch on May 6th and 7th for the first three eldest ISs, and that fourth guy hatched on May 8th. So we can expect, like you mentioned, these are running about a week behind the other nest, and actually you can really see that what a difference a week makes, right? Where these guys still are really in that Muppet stage still, but we are really just starting to see some of their wing feathers start to come out. But we can expect a fledge to them for mid to late June. So they're probably going to be catching up to the other nest fairly soon. And we did see that they were also banded on May 31st, which is pretty cool. Banding raptors is always a bit of a risky move, as oftentimes the parents can come in and kind of take swipes at your head. So props to the biologists who were able to do that.
Yeah, and those people were from the Raptor Resource Project who partner with us for the Great Spirit Bluff and the Castle Rock Peregrine Falcon cameras. Let's talk about some slightly bigger birds that are very close to fledge. They're not quite there yet, but every passing day you're like, it's almost here.
Yeah.
First, we'll talk about the Fraser Point bald eagles. Holly, 3 big birds there for Andor and Cruz.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at that Fraser Point nest, it just looks like you've got four eagles hanging out now. Those 3 chicks are really, really big. And these guys hatched back at the end of March. So our first chick, Sasha, hatched on March 28th, and our second chick, Zuma, hatched on March 30th, and our third chick, Ryder, hatched around April 1st or 2nd. And so what's kind of cool too to see is just how much these bigger raptors take almost a full other month compared to the falcons. So we're still looking at around a mid-June fledge, um, similar to what we were seeing for the Great Spirit Bluff peregrines. But so you can really see just how big these little eaglets are. And they're in what I would call now their full juvenile plumage. And so with these birds, they'll actually spend I think 2 to 3 years kind of before they really get that nice white head, full adult look. But so this is good. They're going to spend their full year in this kind of brownish juvenile plumage, which is pretty cool.
And thanks to the Institute for Wildlife Studies for that webcam. Back to the mid-continent of North America at the Decorah Fish Hatchery Nest in Iowa, we are even closer to fledge, Holly, for the two eaglets.
We are even closer to fledge, and we are looking at similar hatch dates for them, with March 27th for the first chick, DH3, and March 29th for the second chick, DH4. And so we are expecting another kind of mid-June fledge, but you can really see these guys, because again, this is kind of this stage around 2 weeks before fledge where they really just start kind of playing around. They're starting to preen a bit more, starting to figure out their feathers, starting to move around, and even you can notice the difference with they're actually standing on their feet now, not just kind of on their ankle or tarsal joint. So you can actually see them moving around their wings and just kind of starting to really figure things out, starting to branch out a little bit. So just really cool to actually see these guys figuring out how to become birds.
And our partner there is the Raptor Resource Project. They also partner with us and the Philippine Eagle Foundation to give us a look in at Bayani, who's the chick that's, I think, maybe 5.5 months old or something right now, Holly. But this is always a camera that's like best, I think, to watch in the middle of the night if you're a North American at least.
Yeah, so I think based on, since the Philippines is literally half a world away from us in North America, this is a great camera to check out around late evening, I would say, too, if you're looking for something to watch before bed, or if you're looking for something to watch while you're eating a late dinner. This would be a great one to check out at this time. But yeah, it does look like this chick is around 5.5 months old. So we'll just keep checking out and seeing what he's up to. He's also, again, just kind of, you can see, figuring out how to be a bird, really starting to feel the wind beneath his wings a little bit. So it's still a gorgeous bird to watch. And again, the Philippine eagle is just such a stunning bird to me.
And speaking of good-looking birds and great-looking camera views, let's talk about our great gray owls in Montana. This is closer to where you are in the world right now, Holly. But these birds are getting really big. Again, they've been wet because the weather's been wet in Montana, but they're looking really good.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm actually excited to be, I'm heading out to Montana tomorrow to help out with some bird work up there. And so with these great gray owls, we did see hatch was around April 30th, and we were expecting them to fledge kind of any day now, but it looks like the largest owlet has already left the nest on May 27th, but we can see these two just kind of hanging in there. They are really looking more owl-like now. You can kind of see some of their more face plumage coming in, though the weather in Montana has been very rainy the last few days, is what my friends have been telling me. So these owls are definitely looking kind of soggy and a little worse for the wear. So I'm sure they're getting excited to fledge and maybe roost under some more shelter so they won't be as soggy.
And our partner there is the Owl Research Institute. We're going to stick with them for one more update, though, about osprey, because our Charlo nest, we haven't seen a hatch there, but as I understand it right now, Holly, we should be watching this camera perhaps to get a glimpse of those eggs hatching very soon.
Yeah, so with this nest, our first egg was laid on May 1st, our second egg was laid May 4th, and our third egg was laid May 7th. So we could be expecting a hatch any day now because they spend about a month incubating. So early June is when we are expecting a hatch. So if you're looking for some excitement, this would definitely be a cam to keep your eyes on and see if you can see those baby ospreys poking through the eggshells and seeing their first views of the world.
And we got to see that at the Chesapeake Bay Osprey Cam on Kent Island in Maryland, because these birds, these chicks, they just appeared.
Yeah, and that is incredible. You can just see how little they look. And it is actually, it's so cool to see that compared to the other raptors we were just looking at. because even for these birds to grow as much as they do in a month, 2 months is just incredible. And we actually saw hatch for these birds around May 30th to 31st for the first two eggs. And there is still one egg remaining. So definitely be sure to check this cam and see if we get hatch for that last egg. Fingers crossed. Yeah, very exciting to watch these birds. And these hatches actually take quite a bit more time. Sometimes we think they just poke through the egg and they're out, but it really does sometimes take a little bit of work for them to come out of these eggs.
We do have some sad news to share from the great blue heron nest in on the Delmarva Peninsula of Maryland, because we were looking at those birds growing, getting larger, but chicks in a nest, they are tempting prey, Holly, for aerial predators.
They really are. I always say that chicks and nests are just like little sitting chicken nuggets for a lot of predators, which is often why we see birds, the smaller ones especially, really try to get out of the nest and grow as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, we did have a predation of a great horned owl coming in and eating these chicks. And I think it also just goes to show you sometimes we don't think of this kind of bird on bird violence, so to say, or we don't really think of larger birds eating other large birds. But great horned owls really are this predator that just can eat anything. They've been recorded eating small dogs, cats, kestrels, other owls. And this is the first time I've ever seen one actually go after a great blue heron nest. Because if you think a great blue heron, I mean, that's a bird with a heck of a bill that could really defend its nest. So quite a bold move for the owl to come in. But yeah, I mean, these chicks are just kind of sitting prey. So sometimes predators will find them and take advantage of that, unfortunately.
And our last camera that we're going to highlight has not just one, but many different wading bird nests. This is really a beautiful one to continue to watch. The spoonbills and other wading birds at the Alligator Farm Zoological Park in Florida.
Yeah, this one is so cool because there's just such a variety of birds here. We can look for the roseate spoonbills, great egrets, snowy egrets, cattle egrets, little blue herons. We've got tricolored herons, wood storks. So just a really cool variety, and it's just cool too. So a lot of times these birds, a lot of these herons will all nest in a very colonial manner where they're all kind of nest and very close together. And the idea is so that if there is a predator, they can kind of work together to defend each other's nests from predators and have less of a chance of having something like what happened with the great blue heron nest. But this one is really cool to watch. I was watching this morning. There was a great egret and a baby egret, and the baby egret was kind of copying the parent as it was preening, so learning to clean its feathers, even though it doesn't quite have real feathers yet, but still going through the motions. So there's just a lot going on with this camera, so definitely check it out. And who knows what you'll look into seeing.
Well, thanks to our viewers for keeping us updated on what's going on all of these different nests. We do rely on your observations to keep us informed. And Holly, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. We're going to do this again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Mike and Brian, for having me. Always a pleasure to see the updates on Egg Watch.
Awesome. Thanks again, Holly and Mike, for that update. And we also have some other upcoming events this week. Starting tomorrow, 7 a.m. Pacific, we have the AfriCam show if you feel like going on a virtual live safari. And then on Thursday, at 7 a.m. again, we have the Wild Moment show to look at all the best clips from the AfriCam cameras. And I know that the live programming schedule may look a little light this week, but trust me, we're in June now. That is definitely going to change towards the end of the month. So definitely be sure to check out our next episode of More to Explore on June 1. And until then, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And be sure to watch the main cow barn cam and participate in the study. And I want to give a special thank you to our moderators and camera operators, as well as Holly Garrett and Mike Fitz for joining me today. And join us next time again for another episode of More to Explore on June 15th. And until then, happy exploring.